What's up, YouTube? I got an interesting topic. There's a lot of misconceptions about what weather forecasters or meteorologists actually do. People get upset at the fact that we're always quote-unquote wrong. I kind of want to explain what is actually going on when a person is forecasting the weather. So, when a person forecasts the weather, it's not as simple as going outside, looking up at the sky, and saying, oh yeah, it's clear skies today, it's going to be great. I wish it were that simple. That would make my life so easy. Unfortunately, the nature of my job requires me to predict the future. And that's that's a lot more difficult to do. The first thing that I talked about was, that's called observing. And that's pretty much stating what the weather conditions are at the present moment. And that's easy. That's one of the first things they taught us to do when I was training in my job for the Air Force. When I joined the Air Force and I went to study, essentially what they did was they crammed about 4-year college level coursework on meteorology and all atmospheric dynamics and how that all works, and they crammed it into an 8-month period. It's very, very heady, and it left my brain some days coming back from school. I couldn't think straight. I could literally hear the fizzing, the pop. Whoa. I could literally hear the popping and crackling of wires going off in my head, and I couldn't think straight because it was all new and it was a lot of information. In fact, for those who join the military, academically speaking, weather forecasting is probably one of the more intense jobs you can get. There were a lot of people who washed out of my job. They were either put into other career fields or just released from the military altogether because the Air Force decided that they were not worth any additional money. And that does happen. It's not one of those jobs that everybody passes. And a lot of people think that, especially in the military. If you'll hear the term when people come to weather guys, they'll call us nonners because we sit behind a desk and look at a computer screen all day. And we do. It's physically it's not a demanding job. I'm not going to pretend like it's the most difficult job in that regard. However, I guarantee that if somebody were to come into my job and sit down with me and I were to try and explain or have them identify what cold air advection looks like on a skew-T diagram, they'd be completely lost. And that's because it's very science and it is very heady. It's very interesting. One of the things about my job is we're trying to predict the future and we're using incomplete information. If you think about the atmosphere like it's a liquid, different parts of the atmosphere and different levels are going to have different properties at all times. And we've got limited observations of what the atmosphere looks like at specific points, but it doesn't fill in the gaps in between. And for that stuff, we have to kind of guesstimate what is going on. Because of the fact that we can't see stuff, oftentimes we miss identifiers that just aren't there. And if you're experienced enough, you know what to look for close enough to be able to make something like that work. The other thing that makes my job difficult is weather is not the same anywhere in the country. As a weather forecaster, what I was trained when I went through tech school, I was trained to forecast weather for the Midwest, which is a very unique set of circumstances that appears nowhere else in the world. But it's one of the best in terms of complete data that we actually have to be able to forecast accurately. Some of the products, radar coverage, model data, all sorts of information that we have, it is probably the most complete in the Midwest U.S. States like Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, pretty much anywhere east of the Rockies prior to getting to the East Coast. It's a very unique set of circumstances, and things are pretty quote unquote easy to identify. And I say easy because it's not really easy. It's just easier than most other locations. When I left tech school and I began forecasting, I went to Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, and my responsibility for forecasting was actually for all of the military installations in Southern California, in Arizona, and New Mexico, which is a fairly large area. Each area had its own unique set of characteristics that would come into play and factors that came into play for the weather for that particular region. But because terrain is different, wind patterns are different, the climatology is different, and so all of those were factors, and essentially I had to relearn how to forecast when I got to Arizona, because they didn't teach us that stuff at tech school. They taught us how to forecast for the Midwest. Then I moved to Alaska, and again I had to pretty much forget everything that I had learned up to that point, because it was not current with everything that I had learned in the lower 48. It was a completely different animal. It was interesting, to say the least. I have become a much better forecaster because the amount of data that we have is so much less than anywhere in the lower 48. In Alaska, we consider that a data sparse area, and forecasting for it, it's kind of like forecasting for the middle of the ocean, where you just don't have any information. There's not a lot of places that have observations. There's not a lot of places that send up and receive atmospheric data. The models don't handle the terrain very well, and the models really aren't designed to handle any weather this far north. So I've had to kind of learn to adapt to my forecasting style, and I think it's made me a better forecaster. But those are some of the things that I've had to deal with. Now I got orders. I'm moving to South Texas, to Laughlin Air Force Base in the Del Rio area, about 2.5 hours west of San Antonio. It'll be kind of going back to everything that I had learned in tech school. It's a unique job, and nothing's ever the same. Because of the fact that we have incomplete data, you can get 5 forecasters in a room, give them all the same information, and they will come up with 5 different forecasts. More than likely, it'll be along the same lines. Like, you'll have thunderstorms. If thunderstorm indications are there, you'll get that kind of information, and they'll forecast it. The timing might be slightly different, like off by an hour or 2, but you're not going to get the same thing from different people. That's why, if you notice, if you try different apps and different websites, they're all slightly different. The apps that you get on your phone, that's usually all just computerized model data, and it may be right, it may be off. No one really knows. It's kind of depends on how well the models are performing that day. That's why you're going to see some inconsistency with that information. Also, there is a difference between what I do in the military and what the newscasters do on TV. You will find that they are, technically speaking, more accurate, even though what I do is I give a lot more information. And here's what I mean by that. If you've got a guy on TV who's saying there is a 50% chance of rain, he's speaking specifically about a grid box that's of an arbitrary dimension. It could be, 10 miles by 10 miles. It could be 100 miles by 100 miles. Nobody really knows. But when he says 50% chance of rain, he's actually talking about 50% of that grid box, whatever size it may be. I don't remember what I was talking about last. So, oh yeah, I remember what I was talking about now. You can get your weather off of an app, on your phone. And a lot of people do that. And it's a good general idea. Then you can also get your weather source from, public news. As long as you're forecasting in a grid box, and if you say 50% chance of rain, whatever the size of that grid is, as long as you get rain in 50% of that box, you were right. So because of that, and it's got to be at least that much. If you get more, you were still right. There Their accuracy rates are a little bit higher than mine. In the Air Force, we were actually required not to give a percentage by a grid box, but to forecast specific locations at specific times for specific weather phenomenon. We're not given the luxury of probability. We're not given the luxury of general area unless we're forecasting for a larger area. But generally speaking, we're forecasting for like an airfield or a very specific Latin long, and it's not the best. Ooh, this is, by the way, is the Santa Claus house. It's where Christmas magic happens. Let's go take a look at the reindeer. Yes, all the reindeer are here. Oh, they did their shedding of their antlers, and now they're starting to grow them back. He's just coming over to check us out. Hi there. What's up? I don't see Rudolph. On a completely unrelated note, Safeway's having a fantastic deal on reindeer sausage right now. So anyways, as I was saying, we're not afforded those luxuries. We have to be really spot on, having a good day, and there's good things, and then there's challenges about my job. You know, things that are easy for me to forecast and things that I struggle with. For instance, I can handle thunderstorms okay, and here I can pretty much tell when precipitation is going to occur. I've figured out the local features that kind of lend itself towards getting rain and thunderstorms and then even low-level clouds to come in. The one thing that I struggle with above everything else is forecasting fog. God, I hate forecasting fog. It is such a pain because you can look at these factors and sometimes it'll occur and sometimes it won't. And so sometimes you won't see the factors. Sometimes they're just not going to be there, and then you'll get fog anyways. And there's no consistency that I've been able to find and remember anyways. Sometimes I'm on, but forecasting fog is probably my weakest area. I struggle with it so hard. It'll be interesting going to a new area and see if any of the things that I've learned from up here will actually have some sway in what goes on down there. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about what it's like being a weather forecaster and try and explain to you guys the idea that it is not as easy as a lot of people try and make it out to be. I remember a lot of people were blaming weather forecasters and meteorologists for some of the nor'easters that occurred in the Boston area. In fact, Bill Belichick made himself famous for getting really upset for saying meteorologists would get fired for doing his job the way that meteorologists do theirs. And he doesn't have any clue as to what these guys do. And a good example, this winter we had a thunderstorm, or not a thunderstorm. Thunderstorms don't occur up here in winter. We had a snowstorm occur Christmas night, and we were not really prepared. There was nobody forecasting it. We were not forecasting it. The National Weather Service was not forecasting it. Nobody saw it. It was not on any of the models. There was no indication that we were actually going to get it. And we got it. And a couple of people got really, really mad that we didn't forecast it. And truth be told, there was no way we could have seen it coming. Nothing was indicating that we were going to get snowstorms. It wasn't on radar because our radar has a lot of limitations. So and satellite, it was nighttime. Satellite has a hard time picking up low-level cloud cover. in wintertime, especially if there's nothing in the upper levels indicating what's coming above. So we had no idea that it was coming, and sure enough, we got it. It wasn't that much. It was just like 2 inches, which for Alaska is nothing. So, you know, it was like, oh, I guess we missed it. It snowed. Oh well. But then, you know, the next business day that we came in after that break, we got hammered with calls saying, oh, we missed it, and you guys can't do your job, and you're always wrong, and all of this stuff. And it was like, no, I don't think you understand what's going on and what we can see and what we can't. And, you know, it's a part of life. My job, it requires thick skin. There are going to be people who don't understand that we're not going to get everything. It's impossible to predict the future accurately every day. We do the best with what we have. And for the most part, I'd say we're probably 90 to 95% accurate most of the time. There's just occasions where it just doesn't happen that way. And so, you know, we gotta deal with it and, you know, hold our head up and say, yep, we were wrong. Sorry. And that's just the way it is. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this piece of information, what it's like to forecast the weather. If you guys got any questions or want to hear any other topics, let me know. I'd be happy to talk about that. If you got any thoughts on how I can make this better, please let me know. I'm interested in making my vlog better. Appreciate it. Talk to you later. Bye.